Hello, I'm Shane in Sweden, and in this presentation, we're going to look at how we can automate our unit tests, security unit tests, using Selenium and C#. And really, we're going to use it for unit testing of web applications where we have a complex use case, a complicated use case that we couldn't really handle with other tools. The presentation will take place in a couple of parts. In this first part, we're just going to introduce Selenium as a web automation tool that we can use to automatically interact with elements of our web application. In the next part, we'll actually start to use Selenium to carry out a simple security test. Now, in a previous presentation, we actually looked at security testing, where we were looking at the security hygiene of the HTTP response headers. And the tool we used for in that case was Scrapey Sharp. It's a very useful package for grabbing web content. And really, the main function we were using in Scrapey Sharp was navigate to page, where we literally fetch a URL and then we analyzed that URL in terms of the HTTP response headers that were returned. Now, this is a very useful exercise, obviously, and it's a common security task. And we could indeed expand the controls we are carrying out with that tool. But there are some problems with what we did, or some limitations with what we did in the previous presentation. One problem, for example, is that not all web content is static. Some of it is dynamic, and you need to actually activate or do certain things on the page to reveal the content or to make sure that the content is actually fetched. And also, not all web pages are available via URL. For example, one part of a wizard might only be available by actually carrying out the different stages of the wizard. So we may need to look at some other tools to help us look at the security quality of this type of web application. Just to be certain that we're all on the same page, we're going to have a quick look at an example of some dynamic content of the type we're talking about, and we'll show how we can work with that. And in this particular case, it's a questionnaire, a wizard, which comes from Philips. Okay, so here we are at the Philips web page, and they've got a simple wizard here to help you find the toothbrush that fits your needs best. So you've got a simple questionnaire on your lifestyle, okay? And then you can give some information about your teeth and your gums and what your dentist practice says. Okay, so when you've got those examples, then you can just click on the go and it'll give you some suggestions of toothbrushes you can buy. Now, obviously this content was not available selection. It's created probably by some sort of AJAX or other dynamic data fetching once we have submitted one of our choice. And you can see from the URL that this is not something we can really fetch. It's some sort of post operation. So the question is, if we wanted to test the security hygiene, for example, of these elements, or the form itself, or this led to an opening in a new page and we want to look at the headers on those pages. The question is, how would we be able to go through this wizard to get the actual content that we wish to test? And that's what we'll be looking at next. So what testing tool can we use to help us with this type of dynamic content situation? Well, it's a tool that's probably already in use in your organization. And the tool we're going to look at today is a tool called Selenium. And with Selenium, we'll be able to handle these more complex dynamic use cases. So why should we use Selenium? Well, it's free and it's actually built to automate browsers. And so we can use it, this automation feature, to actually automate the interactive clicking we do in a dynamic application to produce the output on the web page that we want. Could we do this with our Scrapey Sharp? Yes, possibly, although it probably require just a bit more work. However, it's always useful to look at different tools to understand the strengths and weaknesses and to expand your skill set and your tool base. And Selenium is probably already being used within your organization. So it's actually a useful skill or a useful ability to develop as a security tester or security professional. For example, within any organization that develops software products, you probably will have a few individuals who are specifically dedicated to application security, perhaps 1 or 2 people, and they will, of course, carry out these kind of tests. But within the same organization, you're much more likely to have a large group of test personnel, people who carry out tests on software that's under development, and probably an even larger group of individuals who actually carry out the code development, the programmers. Of course, it's good if we carry out security tests and build up security testing with tools like, for example, Scrapey Sharp, or in this case, Selenium. But if we can shift left and get our test organization, the test people there, to carry out security testing, or even also include our developers, then we have create a much higher security profile. We're actually carrying out, we have a lot more people carrying out security testing activities within our organization. And your testers and your developers are probably using Selenium today. And this is a very important fact, the fact that your developers and your test personnel are already using Selenium. If you're trying to sell in a new process or trying to get an adoption, an easier adoption of a new series of tasks or a new way of working or a new way of thinking, which is really what we're trying to do here when we're introducing security tests into the development definition of done and perhaps the test definition of done, then you will always find it more acceptable and easier, much easier to gain traction when you're selling in tools or concepts or ideas that your audience is already at least partially familiar with. So this makes Selenium a good candidate as a security testing tool. So without any further ado, it's probably a good time to return now to Visual Studio and pull in our Selenium and see what we can do with this toothbrush questionnaire from Philips. Okay, so we're in Visual Studio. We're going to create a new project. If we just start off with a library, .NET, class library.NET framework, and we'll call this Selenium Sec. So that's the name of our library, Selenium Security. And we want to create another library, which is our test for that. Add a new project. It's going to be a test library. And this one will be Selenium Sec. Selenium Sec.tests. Now our test project, obviously we want to add a reference to our library. Now in Selenium testing here, we're probably just going to do it as a sort of semi-manual process. So it's going to be very pragmatic testing here. We're not going to build a full solution and build a full project with the normal structure. Here we're just trying to test out the methods. And so for that reason, we're just going to create direct references in both the test and the library here to the Selenium utilities that we're going to be referencing. So if we go to Selenium Security, we need to manage our NuGet packages. Go to Browse and search for Selenium. And we need to install the Selenium-Webdriver, since this is what we're going to run. And we're going to run at the Chrome variant of that variation. So we're going to install Selenium Chrome WebDriver as well. And we're going to do the same in our tests. We're installing the WebDriver, yes, and the Chrome WebDriver. Okay, they're all installed, and we can create our first unit test. Let's just rename this to basic Selenium tests. We just want to see that everything works here properly, so we'll create a first method. Let's just use we're going to use Selenium here, and we want to just load our Philips web page. Check that that works. And we would like to get success here, obviously. And we're going to use our AAA pattern as always. So here we're going to create a new Selenium WebDriver, and it'll probably be of type, we'll keep it generic at the moment, WebDriver. Our driver is equal to a new, well, we're going to call something here in our Selenium security library. So we can call in the references we need for this. In the Selenium security library here, we're going to rename this class maybe to WebUtils. Call the WebUtils.initDriver. And that will return a WebDriver to us. So we'll generate the method. If we go to the definition, here we can create a Chrome driver. And we need to draw in the references for that. And then we're going to return our driver. Now we probably want to add some options to our driver. So let's create a Chrome options class. Okay, and the options, for example, we would like our automatic browser to look like our real browser. So we can set the user agent string on it. And on this web page, we can see what our user agent string is. So if we copy that and paste it in, and when we create an instance of our Chrome driver, we can add our options. We may also want to do other things with our driver, so we want to maybe set it so it's always on full screen. We can do that under Manage, Window, Maximize, for example. So we've now got our, at this point it really should be an act, but it's okay. And let's just do an assert to check it works and it's not null. So we don't get any sort of exception. Okay, so let's run our first test. You can see it creates a browser and it sets the browser to full screen, and you'll notice Chrome is being controlled by automated test software, so it understands that it's being driven here by Selenium. Okay, so we're ready to go on to the next stage. We want to load up our Philips toothbrush wizard, and we do that by setting the URL property on our driver. And that will load it up in our browser. And obviously, we're just going to try see if we can carry on through the full wizard and submit it and get up that content we're looking for. So if we go to our toothbrush advisor, we can see the first element is this button, My Lifestyle. And I think when we start it already loads up the page with this first question open. So we would want to check some things and then press the submit. So let's see if we can find this item, which is using an inspect. Now in Chrome, we can zoom in on what they are, and we can see here we've got a checkbox class. So we can find elements by class. We even have a checkbox name. Here we can find elements by name, but sometimes the easiest here, you've got an ID. So we just copy that element. And under this submenu, there's a number of ways we can copy. We can just copy the element as the text description, but we can even copy the element as, for example, an XPath, and Selenium can use XPath to find elements. But in this case, it's fairly easy. So we just copy that ID and we just paste that in. We can see what the ID is, and it's PAQHC question 1, answer 1. And in fact, we might be able to find the mother load there because we might be able to identify all the questions that way. So using our ID, we should be able to find that element. And there's a number of by operators here. There should be an ID one. We choose that. And once we find one element, there are things we can do with it. In our case, we want to click on it, check that value. And at this point, we want to go on to the next question. And we could probably find similar IDs for the other questions. One thing though, when we're doing this automatic behavior, often the machine will actually drive through the questions, checking all the elements very quickly, and it's hard for us when we're building up our test case to actually see what's happening. So it's quite useful to have a method of slowing down what the automatic browser is doing. And so it's we might want to just create a test helper class here, which we will call wait. Wait X seconds. And then we're going to have a time in milliseconds. And inside this, we maybe just have a thread dot sleep. So that once we've done one operation, just so we're clear and it's visible, that we don't flash through everything we're doing at a super high speed. And maybe just wait for a second would be enough. So we found the first element, we've clicked on it. We want to find our next question. So let's go directly to that. We want to probably click on my teeth. For example, how do we click on that? You can see we've got a class which is a p-advisor class. We've got a class which is p-advisor image holder and a span class. Okay, so let's use this class, the myteeth class, and we're going to just copy that element. And we're going to paste this one in as well. So in the next stage, we are going to try click on that. So we're going to driver.find elements. And we're going to use the class here. Now there's multiple classes here, but Selenium can only use one. So we're going to try find this one. Find the elements by class name. And we'll see how many we get. Elements is equal to, right? We need another parenthesis there. And now we can drive our test. And we'll see how many elements we're finding here on that form. So we debug our test. And it maximizes the window and it opens up our form, checks the first box, and it's now looked for this class. Now it's found 4 of these classes. So if we can see we've got one for the first question, my lifestyle. That's not what we're interested in. We're interested in my teeth. And the tag name is the span and the text is my teeth. So let's just copy that text and stop our test. So we can use link Q here to select out the elements we want. Where, and we'll just use system link Q, where our element has a text Actually, I'm probably overthinking this solution a bit because we saw it was actually the second element. So we can just convert this to a list of elements and then elements 1. We can click on that. Okay, let's see if that works. Starts with browser, checks the first question, opens up the second question. Perfect. Okay. So we maybe want to wait for a bit of time. And then we want to answer the second question. So we want to answer the second checkbox. And let's rename this to question elements because we know we have it in the list. At which point, once we filled in the second checkbox, we would want to click onto the next question. And then finally, the last part of the last question. So we can answer the third checkbox, answer the fourth checkbox, and finally submit the form. Okay, so we've got our question here. We want to checkbox the second question. Let's go back to our form. Okay, so let's say our teeth are sensitive. We're sensitive, we have sensitive teeth. So let's inspect that item. And we can see we've got a P checkbox, which has a label. And we've got another checkbox with an ID, and this one's PAOHCQ3A4. Okay. And it also has a name, which is R sensitive. But we can just quickly use the ID again here. So it's question 3A4. So it's question 3A4. And let's go on to our next question then. What are we going to checkbox for that? So in question number 3, we want to say that our maybe our gums are healthy. So let's inspect the view source for that. And we can see we've got another checkbox class, and this is question 4A1. Question 4A1. So we're going back to our questions, and the next one will be question 4A1. The first answer on question 4. And now we can look for the last answer. And now we just need to check on the answer we want to give for our last question. And so we say, what does our dentist say? Our dentist says, perhaps says I should brush more thoroughly, and we brush too hard. See, the answer is coming up here. So let's try one of these first of all. Let's inspect this element. And this is question 2A1, right? And what's this one? This is question 2A3. So 2A1 and 2A3, we want to answer both of those. Okay, so we want to answer both question 2A1 and question 2A3. And perhaps we should wait a little between those and even wait there and there. Okay, so if we answer the second question, we click, we go to the next question, we click. We're not clicking here. We need to find, no, this should be all. This should, in fact, yeah, we should be clicking all the questions now correctly. So we can run this test again. Form opens up, full screen, answer the first question, answer the third question, answer the fourth question. Did we actually answer the second question though? My teeth are sensitive. Yep, my gums are healthy and my dentists. So the only thing we need to do now is to actually submit. So if we just expand the developer window, we can look on the element for the go. And here we can see we've got a class, span class, p button class, submit questions. So let's just copy that class element and go back to our form submission. So this is what we want to click on. And we will do this by driver.find element by class name. And the class name is there, the ng binding. And we know that it's got some text there, go. And we know that the type of the class, the type of the element is a span. So we can do a where operation. Sorry, that should be find the elements. Text is equal to go. And tag name here is equal to span. And that should give us our button elements. And we just need to click on the first, I guess, button elements. Okay, let's see what we find. We run our test. Checkbox the first answer, checkbox the second and third, and the fourth. And now do we find the go button? Certainly found one element, and it's span and it's a go. So let's see what happens when we proceed. And our form is filled in and we fetched some information. Okay, so what have we achieved with this module? We've introduced Selenium within C# as a browser automation tool that allows us to handle quite complex user cases, such as wizards, as we've seen here. So we can use Selenium to automate the process of navigating through a wizard, for example, or another type of web application that has to be carried out in stages so that we can eventually obtain the actual web content that we want to test. And we've seen that Selenium provides some very good, powerful tools for quickly finding the elements that we need to interact with on a web page or from a web application. In the next part, we'll actually look at how we can use it to carry out some simple security testing. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope we'll see you in the next clip.